Kamal, when should I?
So, hi guys, thanks for coming. Hope you guys enjoyed the food. We have here with us James Beshara, CEO and co-founder of Crowdtilt. He's going to talk a little bit about his journey getting here to this awesome office that we've got. And yeah, I'm just going to give the floor to him.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Kamal. And real quick, Gerald, can you hear me very well? Real quick, is this group, so are you guys in the Make Games With Us program already, or just interested in joining? What is the kind of makeup of the group?
Broad range, some
Okay.
admits, some interviewees, some people interested. So,
Okay, cool.
kind of across the board.
Okay, and another thematic question. How many of you guys want to start your own company one day? And you don't all have to raise your hands. That would be statistically inaccurate if everyone did. But, okay, so the significant majority. Okay, cool. And how many of you guys are coders right now? Already coding. Okay, very cool. All right, well then I'll kind of touch on those elements and talk a little bit about, I'll start off by just giving a brief account of Crowdtilt and where we started from and how we got to where we are today. So usually I like to do these with someone asking me these questions, but Kamal refuses to be on camera and do that. So I'm going to have to get up here and go at it alone. I think the most relevant foundational thing I can start with is the brief history of Crowdtilt. And the history of Crowdtilt, jump right into it. The history of Crowdtilt starts actually before Crowdtilt. The history of Crowdtilt starts with the first thing I started, which was in college, a little fly fishing company. A software company is actually an extension of a fly fishing company that I started. Fly fishing is it is fishing with these tiny little lures that look like flies. And if you've ever seen one, they look like little pieces. They look like little works of art. They're very delicate, very very cool and very detailed. And I started a company that assorted these fly fishing flies in little cans, and I would sell them to fly fishing shops around where I was living first, and then it was around the country, then it was internationally. And that was my first kind of entrepreneurial experience, and something that I really, really loved was creating a company out of nothing, seeing an opportunity. And it's something that I talk about every once in a while, kind of what I call an opportunity IQ moment, where I saw an opportunity to import these fly fishing flies for 27 cents, really high quality, and provide them for $3 here in the US, which is about 50 cents less than what you conventionally would buy these fly fishing flies for. And that was kind of the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. A lesson from that was never get into retail. Retail is really, really hard. So is physical goods. Hardware is really, really hard. For me specifically, I learned, okay, this is a really cool niche product and a niche market, but I want to build something a little bit bigger. My first job out of school, and I had studied development economics. Does anyone know what development economics is? It's the study of the economies of developing communities, developing countries, and how you can inflect and grow developing communities. Studied development economics, and my first job right out of school, in fact it was like 6 days right after graduating. I went to school on the East Coast. 6 days after graduating, I started my first day as a loans collector for a microinsurance organization, microfinance and microinsurance organization in Cape Town, South Africa. So that sounds pretty like highfalutin, but I was literally just going door to door in the slums of South Africa collecting delinquent loans, so loan repayments that hadn't been made to the organization that I worked for, that had been lending, that had become a microlender and lending out to these individuals in the slums of Cape Town, South Africa. The reason the fly fishing company and my first job, the reason there's a common thread between the two is because at the very beginning, within the first few months of that job, that opportunity IQ started to go off again of, you know what, this is such a powerful concept of making these loans or providing microfinance, financial tools to the poor, providing insurance tools to the poor, that, you know what, someone needs to build an easy way for people in America to get involved with developing communities through these tools, through micro-insurance and microfinance. Build an easy way for people back home, back in America. If I could tell them what microinsurance is doing in these communities, they'd want to get involved, but there wouldn't be an easy way of doing that. So how can I make and build an easy way for people to do that? I had picked up web development in college, and so I obviously felt there was going to be a strong technology component to bridging these two worlds, and started to build out a website called develop.org that would allow people to get their friends and family, pool money, and make these group loans to communities through microinsurance and microfinance organizations. You could also get a return on your investment. And it was a very early concept. If anyone knows Akiva.org, this is similar for the microfinance side of things. I really wanted to provide this for the microinsurance side of things. And for anyone that's ever participated on something like Kiva.org, you can tell that there's a very cool collaboration element to that product, where groups are pooling their money together for that objective of, in Kiva's case and Develop's case, towards a group loan. And while building that out, two main things happened. One, I realized you can't just build an app and everyone will come. There is no such thing as build it and they will come. All growth, every single company you've ever heard of. Feel free to bring this up in the Q&A afterwards if you doubt me, but every single company you've ever heard of or product you've ever used that has been engineered growth in some form or fashion. There is no such thing as build it and they will come. And I learned that very intimately. You can't just build something and the floodgates will open and people are going to ascend on what you're building and love it as much as you do. It just doesn't happen. The other thing that I learned is regulation is very expensive. Providing interest-bearing loans, I was 22, 23 years old while building this out. And providing interest-bearing loans, the SEC changed their stance on online lending and were requiring us to register as a broker of securities. And that is a mouthful, which just means it was going to be very expensive to build out our model that before the SEC changed their stance on online lending, it wasn't going to be that expensive. In fact, it was going to be quite democratizing. Then it became very expensive and very kind of old world-esque of you need to become a real kind of establishment type of institution to be able to allow this type of behavior, which is a big bummer, but those are two very important lessons. One, you can't just build something and everyone ascends on it. You've got to put your shoulder into it and grow it every single day, knowing that no one is just going to ride there by accident and take it to some viral hit that doesn't exist. Two, regulation can really be expensive. The reason those two things were important is because my opportunity IQ in building out Develop.org went off again. This light bulb went off of, holy shit, this concept of people pooling their resources, pooling their money for these group loans to developing communities, this is so much bigger than just pooling loans, 12 people pooling loans, pooling money for a loan to a developing community. This is going to be so much bigger than even this niche, narrow application I was providing the software for. It was going to be a decade-defining phenomenon. And I'll tell you more about that in a second. While we let Jeremy in real quick, who's supposed to be interviewing me. It's a good cliffhanger, right? Andrew, a good cliffhanger? Right. Hey, Jeremy, you want to jump in? You'll get to hear the second half of the founding story of Crowdtilt, and then you'll get to what you've heard before, I think multiple times. But then you can ask me Q&A.
I just heard that the sound is a little bit scratchy in the live stream. Are we paused right now?
John, no, we're not. Can we pause for...
At Trader Joe's, one of these is a translation you can take literally. This is John Dustin of Trader Joe's. We don't sell little donkeys of any size, but we do sell all kinds of meats. One of our favorites is Trader Joe's fully cooked carne, a traditional Mexican dish of marinated pork that's cooked slowly to a tender finish, and this is something you could make from scratch at home, if you happen to have a few extra hours. At Trader Joe's, how many carnitas is prepared in a citrus marinade and slow roasting. So all you have to do is put it on the fridge and heat it for 2 to 3 hours. Shred it after it's been heated, and you'll have a really nice and milky meat. Good carnitas with tacos or burritos, whatever you want.
Organizing and things like this.
So they signed up to get the peace of mind. On Beauty West Flats, Joseph Foster, Center Eye Company.
I remember that quote. There's no shortage of our own things to do. Well, no, we were,
Cloud has moved in tonight over the Bay Area. We'll have temperatures around the Bay.
Never know where you use it, and it happens to you in the Bay Area. The crowd has a second you're using it,
Third of an inch for most locations.
you got to talk things about it.
And by
How do we recommend? These crossings, it's super easy.
low to mid-80s inland, the mid-70s around the Bay and the
It
coast.
is. Something that I want to give a little more color to that Jeremy didn't touch on is we were tiny back then. It was Kayla and I building this thing out, and a two-man team still not knowing what we were doing. But behind the veil, there was every single hour of every day, on the brink of panic, and it still exists today. And it's something that you get good at putting on a good positive front-looking face, but you're constantly driven by, here are the 7 things that are going right, great, and here are the 3 things that we need to fix. Here is where my focus attention needs to be, and Kayla and I are both extremely competitive as well, and we will find competitive drama in the most random parts of the business world, and we will see examples that might be further along than us, and companies and founders that are smarter than ourselves that will push us just as much. It is healthy, but definitely want you to know anyone that's sitting there calm, cool, and collected, they are going through their own trials, tribulations of building their own company. That's how these companies get built, is whack-a-mole of knocking down one problem after another as you build out the company, and the moles never stop. In fact, they get bigger. So there's never a moment where you sit back and chill because you've whacked all the moles and you just wait for it to send you to the beach. So.
Something else you said I want to touch upon real quick, and then I'm done. So you mentioned that young developers tend to narrow themselves into a small problem and never getting sold opportunities, something interesting. I see something even more devastating that happens very, very frequently, and I see it because I deal a lot with high school and college students, is that people limit themselves to a small problem, but not a small problem with no competition, as James was describing, but they limit themselves to a small problem with huge competition. And that's exceedingly common. So instead of trying to solve big problems in the world that are interesting, require a lot of effort, they're trying to solve small problems that will still require a lot of effort because every other college student in the nation is trying to solve the same problem. And examples are things like making your mission for a year to build the ultimate on-campus textbook exchange, or the ultimate Craigslist replacement for your college campus or high school campus, or a social meetup app of some sort that will allow you to more easily notify your friends that you're going to go on a picnic this Saturday because Facebook events isn't cool enough for you. These are all pretty small problems, and someone might make $1 billion in the next couple of years doing one of those really, really, really right. But it's a small problem with huge competition, and every college kid tends to naturally gravitate to be sort of easy to think of and very unambitious in a way problems. And they think that maybe it is ambitious because there's so much competition, because all these other people are trying to do the same thing. But if you look at the core problem they're solving, it oftentimes is not that ambitious. And so I would second James' statement that it's doubly dangerous to focus down on a small problem, because not only is it small and not necessarily worth your time, but the odds are that if it's small and obvious, everyone else in your position is thinking of it too, and it's actually full of competition, which is not great either.
Yeah, and to add more color to it, I think there are also just our time is limited. That is our most valuable resource, all of us, and the time we have to build something if you are inclined to build a company. And we are swimming in a world with massive problems that still have yet to be solved. The kind of small problem is endemic of kind of wanting to almost engineer the best chance of success. when the truth shouldn't be success or failure. The true objective should be to learn as much as possible, because that is literally, one, it is the best way to guarantee success, because whether you fail in the first idea or the second, the third ends up making it because you learned so much in the first two. So it not only guarantees the most long-term success, but you also can't fail if your objective is to learn as much as possible. If your objective is to succeed, at all costs, just make sure my family and my uncle who invested in me and my best friends that think it's silly, just make sure that they think this is a success. That's all I care about, is the perception, and perception is often reality for a lot of people. And so let me just make sure that they perceive this as a success. That is the most tragic way to spend our limited time on this earth, because we are swimming in massive, big problems every single day that are going to take really smart people like yourselves that bundle up in a house together with 4 other really smart people and say, we're going to work on this problem because we think it needs to be solved, and we're going to learn a shit ton by trying to take it on. Not, let's focus on this problem because it's going to solve some insecurity we have in ourselves. And insecurities are very, very real. But if you orient to the problems that you're trying to solve, or the objective that you're trying to go after, to learning as much as possible, then you cannot fail. You will end up 7 months later, 7 years later, and you will have achieved what I think is the best achievement of any time spent, which is learning. So it's really, really important. Honestly, to underscore that again, we are living in a world with massively big problems still left to be solved. Massively big problems. And when I was young, I don't think I really I appreciated the big problems, mainly because you've been handed a world that you exist in, and you just think, this is, and Steve Jobs says it so articulately, it's you're living in someone else's world. But the way that the direction I'm going to take it in is saying that it's you almost have existed with these problems for so long you don't even know that they're there anymore. And the truth is, every big company that's ever been built has started with a big fucking audacious goal. Even if they were like meek in the press in the first few years, they had a big audacious goal behind whatever narrow edge of the wedge they started with, and it was a big problem that they knew they had and millions of other people had as well. And now we're getting to the point where it's billions of other people have these problems. Like it's you have think of how audacious this is. The world's information. You and your friend from grad school want to organize the world's information. That's fucking insane. And yet 14 years in, 15 years in, 16 years in, Google is doing that. They're literally doing that. They, in 15 years, is an Android, by the way, so it makes the point even more viable. But in 15 years, 16 years of them tackling this problem, they have put, whether you have an iPhone or an Android, they have put more information in your pocket than the President of the United States had when they started the company. That is an audacious, awesome goal, and that's just one goal that these two guys set out to achieve. And they're still 20, 30, 40 years from achieving it. But that's the objective, and that's the pain point that they wanted to solve. So freaking big that I think if you told people in 1997, 1998, we want to organize the world's information, it would have been so big, it would have just washed right over whoever was listening to them. So there are a lot of big ideas and a lot of big problems for people to solve. Yeah, Kamal, do you want to?
No, so I had a question about the wedge that you talked about. Do you have tips on how to find that wedge of your big audacious goal?
I think the best tip, case in point with Crowdtilt, is to be open. Just start building, start talking to users. That is the maximum of YC is code and talk to users. So you start building and you talk to users. The worst thing you can do is hole up, and trust me, I did this. Hole up and build it out, and then just say, no, I don't want to unveil it. I want to have this big reveal, and people will flock to it because it's going to be so awesome when they first see it. Don't do that. It's a terrible idea. Terrible, terrible. Your idea will not get stolen. There's a lot of big problems, but there's even more ideas out there. So people are already working on, the people that you want to worry about stealing your idea, they're already working on their own ideas. So talking with other people is a really great way of doing it. Building, getting something out there, getting a prototype, a working prototype, to where people can tell you and give you feedback that isn't verbal and it's friend to friend, or you take screenshots to train station, get people to play with. You can do those things to get feedback from users, but the best feedback is behavioral, and it's, are they using it or are they not? Why are they not? And then, are they starting to use it because you built out and expanded this feature, or you built more features in this direction, and behaviorally, are they giving you that feedback? Are they building it out even further? Are they using it even more? And that's feedback to keep building it out even further.
Don't worry about perfection.
No, good God. It's why it's a cliche. The idea of the perfect is the enemy of the good. And that is so true. You shoot for perfection, you won't learn shit, because you're probably going to keep it to yourself because you constantly think there's still imperfections you don't want people to see. But two, what you will learn from that is how futile it is. That is the biggest lesson you will learn from, is how futile it is to shoot for perfection. There's shit that we launch every day with Crowdtilt. We literally have a phrase in here: be 70% proud. If you are here and part of the team, then you likely have a tendency to be a perfectionist. Therefore, you're too far on the end of the spectrum of wanting things to look so perfect before others see them, that we literally need to knock it down a few pegs by reiterating this phrase to every single one of our team members, especially engineers and designers. Be 70% proud. That's the easiest way to get them to understand, okay, you could have very statistically significant portion that you might be embarrassed about, but it is getting out the door. Start getting feedback from users.
Another question: what was the first moment that you thought that we made it?
It hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened.
No.
Have you been close?
No, I think we're like 30 years away from that. I think it is. I mean that in a philosophical sense, but I also mean that in a quite literal sense of the philosophical sense would be. I think Bob Dylan said it, and he was talking about musicians, but the worst thing you can do is think that you've arrived somewhere, because that's when you stop growing. So as a company, you can never feel like you've arrived anywhere, or that we've made it, because that's one, either you're setting your sights too low, or you are deluded and you're just wrong, and you kind of get smacked in the face 3 or 4 years later. I remember there was a Newsweek article, and one of our team members, Julie over here, Julie and I were talking about this the other day, that there's a Newsweek article that said the social media wars are over. MySpace has won, and has 254 million users, and Facebook has 19 million users. They're like 3.5. Facebook is 3.5 years old or so, and MySpace is about 4 years old. And so they're almost the same age, and yet one had over 10 times as many users as the other. And that is, I hope no one at MySpace read that article and thought, yes, the social media wars are over, we've won. But I also mean in the very literal sense of, right now, kind of some bad advice that goes around is it's never been easier to build a company. You can, 2 guys and a laptop in a coffee shop can build a company. That is so not true. It's true it's never been easier to start something, but to build a company, you see things every day. Companies like Spotify that raise hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and they still are on their path of building a sustaining, durable, self-sustaining and durable company. And so I think these companies honestly take so long to build that we're just barely about to be 2 years in, and we're in our infancy. Yeah.
You mentioned that the best way to have your company grow and for you to learn is to get feedback from your users, which would beg the question: how does your new company actually get users?
whatever it takes. Like I said, all growth is engineered. It's true. It is you that is like any engineering problem. It doesn't get solved on its own. It's you solving that problem. If you're going to build a company and you're going to be good at building a company, then you're going to be good at problem solving. And you're going to really love problem solving. And if you have 0 users and you're looking for number 1, then go grab your neighbor. Go to a train station. Go whatever the app is. If it's for schools, go to schools. If it's for college kids, go up to college kids. Do whatever it takes. You cannot sit behind a screen and get your first users. I will prescribe that.
That's how we did it. We went to schools.
Yeah.
We just showed up. We're like young enough to not get arrested by walking on a high school campus. And so we walked onto a high school campus and went straight to the computer science teacher's office and was like, hey, can we make an announcement in front of your class? And did that over and over and over again until we got our first batch of students using our materials. So literally just showed up, oftentimes unannounced, at schools all over the Bay Area.
Yeah. They say the first 1,000 users are the hardest to get, and those first 1,000 users, I think the biggest toll it takes is you got to lose all ego to get them. You've got to do whatever it takes. That's a good example. I don't think you, also just as a side note, I don't think you can build a company and still have an ego that's intact. At least a company that really, really matters and build something that can change lives. It doesn't have to change the whole world, but you've got to get down and beg those first few users. So yeah, it's a problem solving. It's impossible for me to give something like completely universally prescriptive, but the first few users, you've got to do whatever it takes. Yeah. Yep.
When you applied to Y Combinator, how far along were you, and why do you think that they ended up accepting your application?
So we were interesting in that we hadn't launched yet, but we had a beta out and we were getting feedback from users. And we were in Austin, Texas, and we felt like, you know what, we could build a really cool consumer company in Austin. There hadn't really been one of these consumer companies that had made a splash in Austin in some time. So we thought we were going to be best by staying in Austin, not going to an incubator. We started to raise around in Austin and around what we were building, and then I think it was one of our first angel investors who was he was a mentor to another incubator, and he was like, if there's one incubator you apply to, it should be Y Combinator. And then we looked at and he was like, the closing date's coming up, see when it is, and you should apply. We looked, and it was the next day, Saturday, and it was closing on Sunday, so we're like, holy shit. Let's apply and be in a position of power and make the decision after the fact if we get in. Ended up getting in, and on the trip out here for the interview, it only took a few days before we were like, we need to be out here. And Y Combinator is a great way to hit the ground running with a network out here. But we hadn't launched yet, and we knew what we were building, and I could see it growing, but we're still super early. But in a lot of ways, I've used a lot of the code base from develop.org for the first version of Crowdtilt. So in a lot of ways, I'd been working on it for years. Hopefully, you guys can read between the lines of knowing that it's just starting is the most important part, and success. It will never look like what you thought it would if that's where you're going for. But just starting can give you the best odds, even if it has many chapters to it.
What's your advice on getting over the idea that it's not going to be what it looks like? What do you got?
I think man, this is fun because I'm able to talk about a lot of these little introspective philosophies that I got. But I think all disappointment in life is a function of expectations, mismanaged or miscalculated, and so I think if you lose all expectations, and that's what's it's a great byproduct of failure, is you start to lose all expectations and you become you become really grateful for each step of the way that you're able to execute, and each day that you get to, Caleb and I think about it all the time. We feel, literally, I think it's not even an overstatement to say on the brink of tears, grateful for every single day that we get to do this. And so feeling grateful every step of the day, I think almost by definition means this is, in a lot of ways, this is, we are kind of hitting where we think we're beyond lucky, beyond fortunate, that for us success is pretty neatly defined as us getting to do this for the next 30 years. So that's it. It's not a size of the company. It's not. I think those will all be functions of us being able to do it and build a company in the right way that we're able to do it for the next 30 years. Any other QA? Yeah.
A little bit unrelated, but what's your opinion on the impact of crowdfunding, particularly non-accredited investor crowdfunding, on angel investing, on angel money, funding for startups, early funding?
So I try not to prognosticate out of subjects that I've gone deep on, and to be honest, equity crowdfunding isn't something that we've gone that deep on, mainly because, well, to be brutally honest, I think if crowdfunding in a non-equity form works as well as it should, then it should relegate a lot of that type of angel investment pointless, to be honest. A lot of companies can get started by selling the product. You see this on crowdfunding platforms every day, and a good example is our API-powered Soylent. Any of you guys come across this nutritional drink that replaces meals? And it's actually has the chance to be quite cool. And this company, these 5 guys in Palo Alto, started selling this product using our API before they raised any investment. They started selling the product that they ultimately would raise investment conventionally. They would raise investment to then sell the product. They started selling the product before they raised investment. And what was really unique and eye-opening about that was they've used our API to power about $2.5 or $2.6 million in sales. When they were about $800,000 in sales, they'd sold $800,000 of a product in about 30 days that didn't even exist yet. $800,000 into the sales. They raised a $1.5 million round from led by Andreessen Horowitz. They led a very kind of conventional, old world type of capital injection round. And of the 2 capital injections, conventionally, for a company to get up and going, it's been very crudely equity or debt. So you either get a loan from the bank in your local burger shop, or you are getting equity investment from investors to launch your nutritional drink company, or some hybrid of the 2. And this third thing kind of happened right underneath our nose of this company just started selling the product that didn't even exist yet. And if you really think about it, it's almost like we've all been in the boiling water, so we've kind of seen this enough, or a couple times enough. Pebble Watch, a great example, enough to where it's like we don't think about it as much. But if you really kind of get out of the boiling water and you jump right in, and you were in a coma from 1994 to 2014, you'd be like, what the fuck? People are just paying millions of dollars for products that won't be delivered yet. They don't even know if they'll ever be delivered. That's like almost like a Wikipedia-esque online, specifically a very uniquely internet thing. If people are just like, yeah, I'll pay $200. I'll pay $200 for this thing that will then 9 months, 10 months later be produced and shipped to you. And what was really interesting in that is, quite mathematically, at $800,000, they raised $1.5 million, but to date, they've ended up selling $2.5, $2.6 million. I think if you were to ask them if they knew that they were going to sell that much, then they probably wouldn't have taken any equity investment whatsoever, because what's better than debt and what's better than equity is you give up nothing for these sales. So I think what's really interesting is if that trend continues, that people with a reputation, people that could use that reputation to go get the ones most primed to get capital investment from debt or equity means, are the exact same people that can also just start selling their product from the get-go in a lot of ways. So it'll be interesting. It'll be cool to see how it plays out. And one more question. Any other QA to end it? Yes?
What kept you going
So the question was, what kept you going when everything was going to shit? Well, there was a brief hiatus there. About for a few months, I was convinced I never wanted to start anything ever again. And after, so I moved back from South Africa after building out develop.org, moved back, handed off to the organization I was working with, and was kind of like, all right, this is, you can run it, use the software however you want, but specifically the U.S. people in the U.S. can't invest, and the organization that I was with was, still had some use for it, and handed it off, came back to the U.S., and though the idea was in the back of my head of, oh my God, this is the next layer of the web is going to be people pooling their resource, collaborating, and how we spend our dollars was going to be the next layer of the web and a decade-defining phenomenon. I still didn't think I had the energy and it in me to do something in this space. In fact, I came back very, very realistically feeling like I never wanted to start anything ever again. And I was in a pretty dark place for like 3 months. I was like, this sucks. We had one of the founders, the founder of microfinance, Muhammad Yunus, was on our advisory board. My professor of 4 years in undergrad that was my mentor was on our advisory board. My dad had lent us $35,000. I'd lost all of this in $35K in the Valley. It doesn't seem like much, but in Texas it's a lot. In South Africa it's a lot. So I felt like, oh my God, this is awful. All of these people are seeing this like slow motion failure of all this goodwill that I'd built up, and all of them people that I wanted to make proud. So I was in a pretty dark place for about 3 months. The two good things of that were that one, I knew how bad failure felt, and it's honestly not that bad. It is. I was in a dark place mainly because I had very mismanaged expectations, and I was doing it for the reasons that I spoke about earlier. I just wanted it to be successful instead of wanting to learn a lot. But also the other thing was, I thought I was never going to do anything again, and it took about 4 months of working for someone else, and I was like, all right, fuck that, I'm going to go start something again. So it did. There was about 7 months there where I wasn't building Crowdtilt, in a hiatus in between the two ideas. Having said that, Crowdtilt has had its own life cycle where there's been, in the very beginning, as I'm trying to convince Caleb, my co-founder, to join me, and I'm still going at it alone, our credit card processor shut us down, and I'm working to code in another credit card processor. And basically we were processing credit cards for these group experiences and group causes and things that basically bending the credit card systems for uses that they hadn't really been intended for, and it wasn't really clear if any processor was going to process for crowdfunding. It's been a very intimately felt problem by a lot of crowdfunding platforms. And so that was going to bed every night thinking the next morning this thing that I was pouring myself into I was going to blow up in my face before it even gets started. And at the exact same time, I'm thinking I am moving to Austin away from my girlfriend for it, bringing on a co-founder, convincing him it's worth joining me on it. After just meeting him, telling him to quit his job to join me, we are thinking about trying to hire our first people, raise a round from these really smart investors, all while every single night I was going to bed thinking, I feel like tonight could be the night that I'll wake up tomorrow morning and we'll have been shut down by a credit card processor again and again and again. All told, we were shut down by 3, and each one just kind of escaped the problem by the skin of our teeth. But it's so even in Crowdtilt's life, it's been some really, really tough times.
Who's the processor in shining armor who did not bail on you?
The two are so balanced payments ended up, and they are awesome, and they ended up building out. They ended up literally building out the product as we needed it, and kind of we said this is our pain points as a marketplace. We need to pay out. We need to pay out 24 hours. We need to be able to authorize cards and then capture the funds. We were literally, and still today, we are one of the coolest things about the way that we're building Crowdtilt is we are like steps behind, few steps. I feel like we're like 6 feet behind the foundational layer of what credit card processing is allowing us to do. And we've got so many engineers on the team that we're able to move fast. And it's literally like the platform is being built for us and we're building right behind it. In a very similar, weird way, Dropbox getting going right as the cloud was being built out is kind of how, and AWS is kind of how I think about us and platforms like Balanced and Stripe that are innovating on this layer, and we get to sit right on top and innovate a draft right behind them, and then the social layer on top of it.
Yeah, I actually do have one.
Sure.
What made you decide that you wanted to bring Khaled on?
That what?
That made you decide you wanted to bring Khaled on?
Can you hear the question? Say the question again?
Yeah, the question was what made me decide to bring my co-founder on, Khaled, and I can tell you this story. It was this investor, probably the best known investor in Austin, Texas, used the product, and he was like, I never really understood the Kickstarter thing, and it was, I wasn't an artist or a creative person that was going to build a funded documentary, and I was looking for this platform that was going to kind of bring crowdfunding to everyone. It was a unique way of him looking at what we were doing, and he was like, I've kind of been waiting for this concept. I really want to invest, would love to meet over coffee in Austin. Go down for coffee, and this was like on a Tuesday, and he basically says, he's like, where's the rest of the guys, the team, your co-founders? And I was like, I don't have any co-founders. And his name's Bill. And this guy Bill's like, well, why the hell does the website say we are doing this and we believe it? Like all this we, and I was like, well, I'm handling people's money, so I want them to think this is like a professional gig. And he was like, this sucks because I want to invest, but I have this thesis that I can only invest in a young co-founder do. It was like you could not young co-founders, but if you are a founder and you're young, you've got to have co-founders. Is what his thesis was, because he was like, what you're setting up to do is going to be so hard, and you've got no clue how hard it is. That's my thesis. So you got to find a co-founder before I invest. And this dude is a big deal, so I was like, shit. I really want this dude to invest in me, and I'd get to do it full time. And I was spending 90% of all of my time and mental energy on it anyhow, and I wanted to be able to do it real full time and get this investor's money. And I spent 2 weeks trying to interview and find co-founders in Dallas, and didn't find any that were real, that had much sharper technical chops than myself and could really be CTO. And so I called up Bill, and I was like, I can't find anyone. I will come sleep on your couch if you'll help me try to find a co-founder down there in Austin, but I'm not finding one up here in Dallas. Go down there, and he says, actually, come on down here. There's a guy that you should probably meet. He leads strategy at Rackspace. Rackspace is based out of San Antonio. This guy lived in Austin. He's like, he leads strategy at Rackspace. He's 26 years old, and if I were to start my next company, and this guy Bill, this angel investor, had started a company called Webmail, if y'all remember that was bought by Rackspace. He said, if I were to start my next company, this is who I would do it with. His name's Khaled. Come down, get coffee with him, and see if you can get him on board. So I hung up the phone. I was like, all right, I got to get this guy on board no matter what. He had been vetted by a really smart person that I respected a lot. And then after 3 hours of coffee with Khaled, and Khaled very rightly so asking me, why do I want to quit my job and build out a platform that helps tailgates and party buses and bachelorette trips happen? I gave him a seemingly compelling answer to that. And after 3 hours, by 10 p.m., he was like, all right, I'm quitting tomorrow. So I'll end it on that note, guys. If there are any other final questions, please shoot me an email, James@Crowdtilt, and I'll try to get back to you. And I hope this was useful for y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah.